Welcome everybody to Pursuit of Happiness CIC's vaccine discussion, and it's just to get your stories of your experience of when you've had the vaccine, if you've had both vaccines, you know, and just to get an insight really on how it's been for you and what made you want to get the vaccine as well, you know, because there's a lot of stigma obviously behind the vaccines, but you know, what encouraged you to get the vaccine as well? So yeah, that'll be good. Okay, right, we've got Dr. Palmer here as well. Dr. Palmer's come as a guest from recommendation of Dr. Dwayne at the Reach Society. Dr. Palmer, are you there?
Oh, there.
Thank you for coming this evening as well.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll be brief. I was just listening to the stories that you've all experienced. I can come at this at just a couple of angles, and so I'm an immunologist. I'm an associate professor of immunology, and so I've come at this at various angles. One is that as an immunologist, I understand, and I've been doing research around how the body fights infections and germs, and I understand the importance of our immune system. The other part is that from very earlier on, and people talked about the virus and the vaccine, what became quite clear, particularly in the second wave, was you starting to see the disparity of what was happening and the impact of COVID. I live in northwest London, in the Brent area, and the Brent area was one of the first areas that really had a serious impact. There's a street, Church End Road, 36 people died of COVID. The hospital, Norfolk Park, which is in Brent, was the very first hospital in the UK that went into emergency measures. So, and it started to become apparent for many folks when they're starting to see the faces, sadly, of people that were, you know, passing away. We're talking of the health professionals. And, you know, and so what COVID has done is highlighted that disparity. And that's something that's going to have a continual conversation, a continual dialogue. Post-COVID, I honestly think now we can't go back. It's that, dare I say, that I don't know, it's almost like a perfect storm. And I hate to use the word perfect in the context of people passing away, because there was COVID, but at the same time, the sad passing, the killing of George Floyd. And that reawakened, that really caused. And so when we look at now, post-COVID, we're looking at people now talking about health disparities and stuff like that, where now I think the community wants to now make sure they're addressed. Why is it that there's a higher propensity of blood pressure or diabetes in our community? You know, and how is the health profession going to look after us? What's also highlighted, and this is my second point, is it's scientists and health professionals who look like their community, has been talking to their community about particularly both the virus and the vaccine. What's been clear is that when I started to engage with the community, this was in December. So last year, I engaged with a church group. So in December last year, the evidence was 70% of Black people weren't going to take the vaccine. And for a number of reasons, the majority of them legitimate, which I know Mark has touched on. But the other point was there was a lot of mis and disinformation. And the evidence suggests it was almost targeting our legitimate concerns. So the journey then for the last 6 months, and I think it's been really impressive, is that this is where leadership is required. And yeah, I think you mentioned, the Caribbean African Health Network. They've been doing great work. Our organization, Reach Society, have been doing some, and many other Black professionals, not forcing the folks to take vaccine, but more importantly, stepping up with the vacuum, where what most people want, most people aren't necessarily stupid. What most people want is just the information. They require the factual information so they can make an informed choice. And what I'm really pleased about in our community is there was a recognition that our community is lacking such information, because the government just said, take the vaccine and done. And that was it. And I think what's really impressive that many of us have stepped up and said, well, hold on a moment, here are some important information. We produced a fact sheet. Faith leaders started to get involved, starting to discuss, to give people the information. No, it can't alter your DNA. You may recall very earlier on, one of the conspiracy theories was around 5G. And now that's completely disappeared. No one talks about it.
Nope.
There was talk of in our community very earlier on, but disappeared quickly. Oh, the vaccine can alter your DNA, or it can turn you into a bat. I mean, some of those crazy theories.
Or it's got a chip in it. That was one as well. It was like, what?
And one of the things which I think, and this is where I think our community is starting to recognize this, is we're starting to be a bit discerning, to say, hold on a moment, where is all this information coming from? A good colleague of mine, Dr. Winston Morgan, has been tracking this. And what I'll end in this, because I think this is really important, is that it would appear that a number of the conspiracy theories are actually coming from right-wing elements. Now, this is really important to recognize, that these organizations don't naturally care for people who look like us, right? They don't care for people who look like us, but somehow they're smartly targeting us. And this disinformation, you may think, oh, Donald, you're talking nonsense. We can't. Let me remind you of an important documentary, and there's evidence that one can Google. And the question is to ask is, how did Donald Trump get elected in 2016? You may have seen this documentary. You may know what I'm talking about.
I have seen it.
Yeah, what they did was they recognized, well, hold on a moment. As anyone know in US elections, there's certain areas, right? Because it's based on college. It's not one man, person, one vote. It's based on electoral college. And there are areas where there are predominantly African Americans. And what they then decided to do was to target those communities with negative campaigning, which brilliantly worked to allow Trump in.
Yeah.
Right? Don't forget, Hillary actually got more votes.
More votes, yeah, she did.
Because of the electoral college system, because of the negative campaigning. 4 years later, recognizing that, Stacey Abrams then did the reverse targeting to make sure more Black and brown people voted. And what happened? They turned it around. So
yeah, it's
an example of how the information can actually be used both positively and negatively. So I'll end on that. But thank you for the invite.
No, thank you. We appreciate you coming. Dr. Dwayne obviously spoke highly of you, and Winston George as well, we know, and he's going to be on our platform later this month as well. So yeah, we're looking forward to him coming along. So yeah, and you're invited as well if you like to come along. That's not a problem. It's a sickle cell blood donating event, so it'll be a good one.
I'm pleased to hear, and I know the organizers, the origins of the African Leukemia Trust. And, you know, there was World Sickle Day a couple of weeks ago, and I gave blood. And I don't know if it's related, but I know Oren and Beverly have often spoken about that interconnection. Sickle cell disease, which you know predominantly affect us.
Yes.
We are the lowest group of donating blood.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I know. And this is why we're really keen. We've spoke with Tracy from the Sickle Cell Society, and we've explained to her that we want to have like quite a close working partnership as a regular on the platform, because it's important that our community realise that our community need their blood.
Yeah.
I've got mine booked in for next month that I give blood. So yeah, it is so vital, and especially among the men as well, because there's a certain type of blood that they need more so from our black men. Yeah. So my brother's booked in; he's going to give blood as well. So yeah, it is so important. And when we had John James on from the Sickle Cell Society earlier in the year, and he did touch on the fact of the COVID and sickle cell and how important it was for our sickle cell sufferers in the community as well, that they took the vaccine. Yeah. Extremely important. So yeah.
So in fact, we had a debate last week and around, you know, COVID. Another one of our discussion. I think some of you may have been present at that event just Friday gone. And we invited a top sickle cell specialist, Dr. Rachel Kazu-Adu, who's based at St. Thomas's, and she looks after sickle cell patients. And
said, Winston told us about it. Yeah.
You know, as she said, you know, if you get COVID as a sickle cell, you know, that could really put you into remission. And so she has discussed and, you know, told folks to be vaccinated. So, and that's why it's really important.
It is.
We listen to the experts. Because, as I said before, there's this false sense of equivalency. So Dr. Rachel is an expert, been studying this, looked after patients for a number of years. Somebody watches a couple of YouTube clips and they now think that they have the same.
And they're the expert. I know, isn't it crazy? It honestly, it's mind blowing. It really is mind blowing.
And other groups would not be accepting that. Other groups, hold on a minute. Let me see your qualification first.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we need to be, you know, discerning. But I mean, immensely proud and pleased that many folks in our community have stepped up so that we can provide the information. And what's really, really comforting was in December, uptake was poor. And now, you know, we're almost 70% of Black people have taken the vaccine. So what's interesting.
That's amazing. Yeah.
As you pointed out, now there's more Black people that have taken the vaccine that have not.
Yes.
Right. And I don't know about you, but I've been asking my circle of friends who've taken the vaccine, have you one turned into a bat? How are you feeling, etc., etc. but they're still a stubborn. And what I think we now need to be is cautious of the following. Is the government is now saying, well, listen, and I can see they're under pressure. They're going to be opening up the economy. They're now saying we won't be taking face masks, etc., etc. So now this is going to be really important that folks have got some form of protection. And what you would have probably seen or heard is the surge in cases. Okay, hospitalization is still low, but what's quite interesting, those that have either been infected or have had problems are invariably the non-vaccinated individuals, right? So it's quite clear, and as you said, Mark, direct correlation between those that have been vaccinated, particularly the double dose, compared to those that have had one dose or potentially not been vaccinated.
I didn't want to interrupt because you were doing such a good job there. There was one question though, and it's the comment I've been hearing on the majority of people who aren't taking the vaccine, and it's the same thing. I've got a strong immune system. I don't need to take a vaccine. I don't get colds. I don't get flu. So why would I be worried about this particular COVID-19?
Well, one of the things is really, and then again, this is where we people need to be informed. I was really gracious to share a platform with Professor Kevin Fenton, who looks like us, who's the Director of Public Health, England. And he told me, and it's been on record, and I've done some research on this, is the situation is what was called long COVID. Long COVID is something which we really don't know much about, but now almost 2 million people have had long COVID. And it seems to be affecting young people. So yes, you may recover. I know personally of one individual, young man, who when he walks up the steps says, "Donald, I get knackered." Sorry, I don't use the term knackered, but I get tired. So one immune system might say, well, I may not die of COVID, but there's issues. And I know, speaking to some of my colleagues and clinicians, they're now setting up clinics. There may be one in Huddersfield that's now specifically looking at long COVID to try and address that. So that's a problem. So what you're seeing is that the idea is you get COVID, I don't feel so good. And, some people after 4 weeks, they recover. But there's people now, even after 8, 9 weeks, that have not recovered. And that's what people are trying to work out. And he told me people in their 20s and 30s. And I guess one other, I think my wife might be getting that. See, you can tell this is live. One other point to raise, and I think, Mark, you mentioned this, but it doesn't necessarily get highlighted enough. Yes, this is a disease of age, but as you said, Mark, when you visit wards, you do see some young people in there. So we just need to be careful on that front.
Okay. Well, we said we weren't going to take up too much of people's time tonight because it is just one of many that we'll be doing over the next few weeks. But if anyone's got any questions they think Donald may be able to answer, or if there's any comments you want to make just to close down for today, feel free.
I think one of the things that it is important to say, especially to, well, there are two things actually. I've been on quite a few Zoom meetings over the months with NHS and commissioners and this, that, and the other. And quite frankly, there were personally, and speaking to especially older age group and people my age, or we're technically middle-aged, we were very, very keen to get the vaccination. I think it's like the Reverend Brown and Johnny Flowers said that, we thought about it, weighed up the pros and cons, and we were definitely in the majority of people, especially in the Black community, who were taking up the vaccine. I know that there are lots of myths and conspiracy theories flying around. And it was definitely not the majority of people who were against keeping their health, making sure that they're healthy and taking the vaccine. There's a difference between anti-vaxxers and people who are cautious. Oh, yeah. And what happened was that people were just all swept up into one, and that rhetoric went out. So, lots of things were said about minority communities which were just not true. And people have to be cautious because this is our health. It's not our bodies that will let us down. It is bad health that gets you. That's what we need to protect ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And for me,
yeah,
you know, you're absolutely right. The argument, really, our community should be saying is, as you say, Corinne, is why haven't we had appropriate messaging? I'm not a public health expert, but speaking to those people who are in public health, let's say Donald, with diseases, you know, like cancer and whatever, if you want to target, you know, the BAME community, I know it's a term we're trying to shy away from, so diverse community, you use appropriate language and appropriate medium to target. Once the government says, let's, okay, we're taking the vaccine, it didn't do any of that. And that's the key thing. And you're right, it should be argued, why wasn't there specific messaging around that? So, and I agree. So I don't no longer use the term hesitancy, you know, because that puts the blame on our community, when in fact, we have every right to be asking questions. So that's why I'm glad people are starting to use a term like vaccine confidence or vaccine agency to say, well, until we're confident or until you provide us with the appropriate information, I'm not that confident, which you have every right to. Because remember, taking a vaccine is still voluntary. So I think that was the point you made is really a good one. But what I am hoping for subsequently is, now that we've had that agency around vaccine, and I've never been in so many debates about one single vaccine, I do hope now we can take that energy and momentum for other issues and other causes. Absolutely. That was there before COVID. Otherwise, our community will be labeled as a one-issue community.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
And that's really important.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think it was in February, March, the churches had a district, because you can't meet, so you have a Zoom meeting, and they had a doctor who spoke about the COVID, and he said he actually saw the actual COVID itself. You know, he have the privilege of go and see it in a glass where they have it secure. And it's not a good thing to look at. But he said, black, and he was talking about black people because he's a black doctor. And he said the important thing is, if you don't take it, and going down the road, you have your grandchildren, and then after a while, one of them die or something like that, and you know that is because you didn't take it, you will have that for the rest of your life to sorry about, and it's too late. And I think when he says that, because there was about 4 churches that listening and other people, I think it make a lot of difference. I'm in England. I had a relative in Jamaica and a niece. I never knew she was so brilliant until she died. And the simple reason, they had a funeral, but they had a memorial the night before, the Tuesday. And it was on for 3 hours. And the director of that firm said that she was an angel on a mission that accomplished and gone home to be with the Lord. She was only 50 years old. The service itself was on for 5 hours. I never knew that she done so much. She trained so many people because of a job that I was doing. But in all of that, she died. And they say it's COVID related. And I know that because of that, our mom couldn't go and see her, our husband couldn't see her. And when I listened to a recording where our husband was talking to the doctor, and what the doctor says to him, he said, look, she were at our blood system was 50. We brought it up to 80. The maximum is 90. And when he says that, I just thought, wait a minute, if he's saying that, it means to say it's machine that causing her to breathe, not herself. And it worked out that she died a week after. So I'm saying that it's so important that Black people and their children should take this vaccine, because prevention is better than cure. Before the vaccine came in, there was no prevention, but now it's there. I think we should use it.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know in terms of Huddersfield, but I know in London, and maybe those that on WhatsApp, I don't know if you recall that at one point, Black people were saying, the vaccine, the virus don't touch us. I don't know if anyone remembers that. There was a very short period when like, hold on, man, we're Superman. So everybody was saying, which I don't know where that came from, but I definitely know. And I think the impact in our community came particularly in the second wave, whereby friends, family I spoke to, everybody knew somebody that had it. And I think that's when people started to say, whoa, this does appear serious. But I do distinctly remember earlier on, we thought we were impregnable.
Can I just say that there is something more, just as important, that Reverend just brought up in his talking, is that many people do not realize how many Black people of note who are scientists working in this country, who are doctors who specialize and who have given their expertise to actually getting this vaccine on the road. And I think once Black people realize that we are part of the solution, that we are not just doctors and nurses, but we are scientists, we're advocates, we are society researchers. And I think that some messages are just not getting through to our people. You know, when we see people dying of COVID, like we did last year, those that work for the NHS, we just assume that they were just ordinary doctors, whatever ordinary doctors look like, or ordinary nurses, or health carers and that sort of thing. But they don't realize that we have an abundance of specialists that are helping the NHS, and a lot of them are Black. And I think that needs to be that story needs to be out there.
No, thank you, Joy. You made a good point, and that's something. This is really what Reach Society has always been about. Reach Society, its motto is building connections. And Reach Society believes that when you scratch below the surface, despite the issue of systemic racism, which still exists, absolutely, nevertheless, there are still many talented folks in our community. The point is that we are not telling our story, as you pointed out. And so our young children are growing up thinking that there are only small or certain avenues that's portrayed by the media. And they don't know, scratch below the surface, there are some fantastic individuals in a wide variety of fields. And what we do as Reach Society, and we've been doing for over 10 years, is to highlight, to promote the many success in our stories, make young people connect with basically what we say is role models. We don't do mentoring, but it's just really, and it's really about the power of advertising, right? You know, by showing someone driving a car, that's enough for people to want to buy the car. So, and the difficulty we always found with mentoring, which I still do, but it's a one-to-one. How can we have a greater impact? And what we did a few years ago, and we've been doing since, is organizing career fairs, a whole day event. The last one we did pre-COVID, we had around 70 Black role models, from accountants all the way through to engineers, doctors, scientists, veterinarians, etc. Yeah. And we had 30 companies and a host of different universities. And in many of those companies, they brought someone of color. And the last career conference we did pre-COVID, 1,700 people turned up.
Wow.
And they could identify, speak to someone who looks and talks like them to say what they did. I'll give you one example. One of the top mathematicians in the UK is a Black guy from the Midlands area, Birmingham, a guy called Dr. Naira Chamberlain.
Yes.
And yet,
wow,
it's one of the best kept secrets. No one knows him.
Wow.
No one knows him. And then someone who's my namesake, from Jamaica, Professor Sir Jeff Palmer.
Was that Scotland? Scotland?
Yeah, in Scotland. Scotland's first black professor. And he's one of our patrons. You know,
well, we need to get those stories out there. We really do.
Yeah, and Joy, and you're right. One of the things that COVID has done is highlight, in a way, there are people who look like each other, who are actually doing great work and are able to talk about it. And I've been really important in providing such confidence in our community. So it's almost like a double win. And we did an event, another COVID event, a couple of weeks ago, where in fact, we actually brought scientists. The majority of scientists were under 30. And that caused a massive explosion. People weren't really focusing on the COVID. They were saying, hold on a moment. There were some black boys, black women, young, under 30, who spoke with such power and knowledge. People just went crazy. And that's what gives one's pride. It was mad. No one's, I still get texts now from that event that was 2 weeks ago.
Well, makes you proud.
Yeah.
Makes us proud to know that is going out on, as you say, below the surface. We now need to bring it to the surface.
Yeah.
We now need to bring it out into the open. And maybe then people will see us in a different light.
Yeah.
We can't continue to hide our light under a bushel.
No. And clearly, as you said, advertising works, so why wouldn't it work in this sphere?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Johnny, I think you wanted to probably ask one of the last questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I think the best thing I think have ever happened to the black humans are what's just happened now, the COVID and the death of Floyd. Because our history has been stolen from us. We talked about all the professors, the young people. They were there all the time. We never hear about them. There was no media to get us to think that we have in our race so many brilliant people. That all of what they've done has been stolen. And this pandemic and the death of Floyd has changed all things. And now we have a platform to roll on. We wouldn't have been talking to each other as we're doing now had it not been for these two subjects.
Yes.
So I hope we can roll it on and make it for the younger people. Let it bring forth fruit to say we have a starting point. Let's use it. Let's not forget it. Let's use what we've got now. We have the opportunity. And I ask the younger people, and that's what I've always wished and hoped for, that they will come up. You know, the professors we have, the doctors we have, they've always worked. We have, when everybody's talking about how the NHS has done such a great thing, but the people who did the NHS and started were mostly all black people, and they haven't got a say in it. You know, it's as if they weren't there. That never happened. It never happens. Now I hope we will use this as a rolling block and start off and saying, yes, we were there ever before the white race were there, and we should use it. And we need to put our first foot forward and show the world that we're capable, and we're always capable, and prolong and make our young people better. And things should change.
Thank you, Johnny. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking part in this talk tonight. As I said, it will be the first of many, but I really appreciate the time and energy that you've put into this discussion. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you all again in different events. So enjoy yourselves. Have a safe journey home. I want to use that one. And we will send you an advanced copy of the edited version of this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll say one thing before I go.
Of course you can, yeah.
See, I'm the one with a drink. I'll say cheers.
But I have to say, I do have a very, very strong affinity with the Huddersfield area.
Oh.
Primarily, just 1 minute. I have to say this because you're from Huddersfield. I never had the chance to see you physically to say this, but I studied at Bradford University.
Wow.
Okay. So that's why I did my first degree. But more importantly, my uncle and auntie live in Huddersfield. They live in a place called Fartown.
Hey!
Right? But the story,
On your doorstep, guys.
Yeah, I'm in Fartown right now.
But the story is even better. So my auntie's still alive. I spoke to her pre-COVID a few months ago. But the story is even better because so this is me, 18. I'm up north, and my parents are worried. And I said, no. You got an auntie, uncle and auntie in Huddersfield. So I went there, and what happened was, as Black people, my auntie just cooked so much food. I then brought it back to my halls of residence, and then I couldn't eat all this chicken. So all my white mates who lived in the halls of residence would then gather, and then what happened then? A few of my other Black friends went, hold on a moment, where you get this food from, Donald? I'm not eating. So my aunt said, no, bring them along. So literally every weekend, not just me, but a whole heap of people used to go. My auntie cooked them food.
They come for the chicken, innit? They come for the chicken.
Cook up time.
No, my auntie fed me and a whole heap of people. That's why I love Black people. You didn't know them. But she said, no, if I'm feeding you, I'll feed everyone else.
Yeah, that's how it is in the Caribbean household, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
It
I
is.
just thought I'd show you that story, because that was fantastic.
That is Black people all over.
Yeah.
Actually, Donald, I'm a Palmer. I'm a Palmer as well. And one of my uncles was called Donald Palmer. But your auntie, do you know what? She sounds just like my dad. That is what my dad would do. Yeah.
So my uncle is Alfred Palmer.
Oh.
You know a person called Alfred Palmer. And
so Donald, you got relatives in Luton?
I don't know about Luton, but I do know I could do.
So I used to move around with two Palmers, Lawrence Palmer and Desmond Palmer.
Oh my God.
Both Jamaican as well.
This is a small bird.
Crazy.
Yeah. Technology's made another connection, you see. It's bringing us all closer together, literally and figuratively.
Well, I'll tell you this. Ready to come. We will cook you some chickens.
Yeah.
I've got to come to Huddersfield and Bradford. So once COVID is, calm.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, it would be good.
Do you remember the street name, Donald? Do you remember the street name?
So all I know is, yes, I do, Ripon Avenue.
Yeah, know it well. Just off Bradford Road.
Opposite.
That's right. It's along Bradford Road, and
And Mountains, yeah.
I think she's still there. I think it's number 18.
Wow. So you know Whitby Avenue.
Next house
Ripon
from
Avenue.
lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small world.
Oh, it is a small world.
It is.
Crazy.
Okay.
Crazy.
All right.
Oh, it's been a great evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Really time.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
God bless.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Donald, you're brilliant.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.